Hello there, and welcome to this presentation by Express Publishing. My name is Daniel Morris, and today I'm going to talk to you about digitalization in education. And together we're going to look at some practical uses of technology in the classroom to engage students and facilitate language learning. Now, despite the recent shift to online teaching, which has affected many teachers over the last 18 months, I think we can all agree that we already live in a highly digitalized world that is constantly evolving. And this global digitalization affects us in many different ways. And I'd like to share with you very briefly a video that presents us with some interesting and eye-opening facts about global digitalization and how far digitalization has actually come in recent years. Okay, so some quite interesting facts there. And as the video points out, the world is transforming. Whether we like it or not, technology is reshaping many different aspects of our lives, all the way up to education. The way that we think, the way that we learn, the way that we teach now is being drastically transformed. And as teachers, as educators, as ELT instructors, I think it's about time that we stopped and thought about where we stand with technology. As Eric Qualman said rather eloquently, we don't really have much of a choice whether we digitally transform or not. Technology is with us, it's here to stay, it's not going to go anywhere, and it's only going to continue to advance and develop. So as teachers, our choice and our main objective is how well we are able to adapt our methods to fit in to this digital age and engage with this new generation of digital learners that we find inside our class. So then, why should we use technology at all inside our class? I'm sure many of us have been using technology a lot more during the last 18 months in order to stay connected with our students and deliver our lessons when we couldn't be face to face in the classroom. So technology can have many benefits for our learners. One of them actually is about engagement and motivation. If we have a look at this study from 2016, we can see that a very large percentage of students actually commented on the use of technology in the classroom, saying it made learning more fun and more interesting for them. And perhaps most importantly, they acknowledged and realized that using technology as part of their English lessons was actually helping them to develop useful skills that they could use for future employment. So something quite interesting there that we should probably take into account. And I think we should also note that today's learners that we find inside our classes are what we call digital natives. These are people that have been born into a world completely dominated by technology and by the internet. Today's learners have a vast amount of information available to them at the very click of a button. So if we want to engage and motivate our students, our classes should engage them in ways that they find interesting, in ways that resonate with them. So perhaps using technology can be the way forward to doing this. Technology can also help us to incorporate many different learning styles. We have a wide range of apps, augmented reality software available to us today that allows students to access language in a way that they have never been able to before. And it helps us to cater to different types of learners within our class. We may have audio learners that learn best through audio means. We may have visual learners or kinesthetic learners. We may even have a mixture of different learners. So using technology can help us to engage with different learning styles and help our students to learn language in new ways. Technology can also help us to prepare our learners for the future by engaging them with 21st century skills, such as communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Our students now can use things like PowerPoint, they can make videos, they can use computers at home to conduct ICT research and self-study and develop their critical thinking skills, for example. They can also connect outside of school to many e-learning platforms to help them to develop a wide range of skills that are not just linguistic and academic, but skills that can be transferred easily into their future employment roles, for example. Now, technology overall has helped us to bridge the gap between school and home. If we think about the traditional classroom, the traditional school, the traditional teacher, these were the center of knowledge and the center of learning for our students. Now our students are able to go home and further develop their skills and further practice using technology, using things such as LMS systems in our classes, using interactive whiteboard software, using messaging services. Our students are able to remain connected to their colleagues, to their teachers through technology, and further develop their knowledge and skills. So we've effectively been able to help bridge this gap between learning at school and learning at home to provide a new holistic experience for students. And as teachers, our role has changed in that we are no longer the center of knowledge for our learners. We are able to help our learners to develop these skills in a more active role. So then, if we're thinking about using technology in our classroom and implementing technology into different parts of our lesson, I think we should ask ourselves 3 key questions today. This is what I'd like to address in today's presentation, and these 3 questions are going to help us to move forward and perhaps use technology in new and interesting ways, not only for ourselves, but for our learners as well. So we're going to be looking at what types of learning are occurring in my lessons, which digital resources do I have at my disposal in order to actually engage my learners and facilitate learning, and in what ways can I actually use these resources in my lesson in different ways. So we're going to be looking at these questions, and hopefully we can find some answers to them. So when we're looking at different types of learning that are occurring inside my school, there are generally 2 types of learning. One of them is called synchronous learning. This is learning which is taking place inside a group space in real time with a teacher and a class. A synchronous learning environment involves high interaction between the teacher and the class. The teacher is delivering a lesson, they are presenting information. The students are receiving this information. They are perhaps communicating with the teacher, with their colleagues, with their peers, and practicing. And then they're actually giving some form of feedback back to the teacher in the way that they present their answers, for example, or by asking questions. And then the teacher is then providing additional feedback through correcting the students or guiding them through exercises. Synchronous learning can be achieved in a face-to-face classroom, which we know the best. It can also be achieved through online live webinars like Zoom, Skype, or Google Teams, or Microsoft Teams even. It can be achieved through instant messaging and virtual classrooms. The main characteristic of synchronous learning is that it's a collaborative and feedback-friendly environment. As I mentioned, we have this backwards and forwards constantly of information and feedback from the learner to the teacher. So this is one of the learning styles, or one of the learning methods that we should be considering when we're talking about implementing digital resources into our classroom. The next one is asynchronous learning. This is learning that is taking place inside an individual space. This is individual learners completing tasks on their own, in their own time, and not necessarily inside the classroom. It can be in any location. They log into their mobile phone, their tablet, their computer, and they are completing exercises. This can be completed through LMS platforms via email. Students may be watching pre-recorded videos to study before a lesson, or they may be watching recorded lessons that they have been unable to attend to study them afterwards. It can be done through webinars or even through online discussion boards. And what we find with asynchronous learning is that it's a much more learner-centered approach. Our learners are working through the activities in their own time, and they may be using their preferred methods to study content. They may be using extra resources or studying things on their own to help them complete exercises or learn more about different topics that they're studying. So with asynchronous learning, what we get is more targeted feedback. We're getting individual feedback from individual learners on specific tasks outside of the class. So this is what we have essentially inside our schools right now. We have learning taking place inside a group space and inside the individual space. And in order to engage our learners in these two types of learning, we then need to think about what kinds of digital resources we have at our disposal. So this brings us to our second question. What types of digital materials can I use with my students? Now, perhaps you have been using a wide range of materials, especially in the recent months when we couldn't connect physically in the classroom with our students. So here are some of the most common digital resources that we use inside the classroom. This could involve an LMS platform or learning application to present information, or perhaps to submit homework on behalf of the student, or present homework to students from the teacher. This could include interactive whiteboard software to present and deliver your lessons inside the classroom or through sharing your screen on Zoom, for example. Or it could include students using PDF copies of books or IE books, digital books to access content at home. E-meeting platforms like Zoom or Skype, for example, to deliver lessons. Using video or audio material, or even gamification content to engage students in learning that has some kind of incentive for them to complete tasks. So perhaps we've been using one, two, or maybe all of these different resources. And I think these are some of the main resources that are most readily available to us, and resources that we can use effectively to facilitate synchronous and asynchronous learning. So let's go into a bit more detail now and look at the practical side of using technology inside the classroom. We're going to look at some digital strategies for synchronous learning. So when we're together in the class with our students, or if we're teaching a live lesson through Zoom, for example. Now, as I mentioned before, inside the synchronous learning environment, we have this constant to and fro of information and feedback. So perhaps we can actually use technology in different parts of our lesson for differentiated instruction. So using audio and visual kinesthetic materials that can help our learners to be presented with and practice different skills, for example. We can also include blended learning into our classes by substituting traditional parts of our lesson with technology to engage students in different exercises. We may also want to use technology to demonstrate models for language production. If we want our learners to be communicating, collaborating inside the class, we need to provide some kind of model for them to be able to get some kind of example or template for language production. So we could use technology in some areas to facilitate this. And finally, through active learning, we want our students to be engaging actively with language inside our classrooms. So we may want to use technology in role play activities, through quizzes, debates, discussions, ICT research, or even projects inside our class. So these are some things that perhaps we can also think about using technology. I think it's important to mention here as well that we don't have to use technology in every single part of our lesson. Perhaps it's better for us to think about different areas or different parts of our lesson where we can incorporate technology to actively facilitate something like presenting information, stimulating some kind of interaction between students, or helping students to produce language. So looking at differentiated instruction using different digital materials, perhaps you can actually use technology to present vocabulary through audio and visual media, for example. Maybe you're using an interactive whiteboard software in your class. If you're not using one, you can always find images from the internet. You can also record your own sound clips to help your learners access new vocabulary in many different ways. So we're looking at here just some presentation of different rooms in a house through audio and visual materials that can be used in an interactive whiteboard software, or if the teacher wants to create their own content by gathering some images and sound clips, for example.
Wall, roof, kids' bedroom, master bedroom, bathroom.
So these could be some ways that we can engage students using technology, very simple uses of technology, just to present our vocabulary in a way that would resonate with them and help stimulate different learning styles. The same can also be said for grammar presentation that we find. If you're teaching grammar, if you want to study grammar rules, perhaps it could be a good idea to implement some form of technology, again, an interactive whiteboard software, or if not, finding images from the internet that you can share to add some context to the grammar presentation. You can also add some audio files as well for context. Here, this could be an example of a pre-recorded sentence or phrase that you could share with students to add context to grammar presentation.
At 8:30 a.m. last Monday, I was driving to college. At the same time last Sunday, I was sleeping.
So there are many different ways that we can do this. Students can also prepare their own video or PowerPoint presentation to present different grammar rules. This could be a kinesthetic task for the students. They can actually prepare their own short videos. As teachers, we can find videos online. And as I mentioned, we can record audio files to demonstrate different grammar tasks. So it doesn't always have to be us just simply writing things on the board. We can incorporate different media to present information, whether that be vocabulary or grammar rules, for example. So this is something that perhaps we could consider in the ELT classroom through differentiated instruction with very simple technology. Another part of our lesson that perhaps we can look at with technology is this thing of blended learning. Being able to substitute traditional parts of our lesson with technology to engage learners and get them working with different resources at the same time. So here we have a traditional task. We have a simple reading comprehension task. Students are going to be reading a text and answering some questions, checking their understanding. Now, in a blended learning classroom, perhaps we can actually substitute the reading text with a video.
Droids at work. When we think of droids, one film series comes to mind: George Lucas's Star Wars. Let's take a closer look at what these robots can do. C-3PO, or 3PO to his friends, is a protocol droid.
So I won't play the whole video, but I think you get the idea. So instead of our students simply reading a text, we can present it to them in a different way using a video, for example. Students then answer the questions, the reading comprehension questions, in a digital format. They can either submit their answers via the chat if they're in a Zoom classroom, or post them on a message board, or use Google Forms to answer the questions. Once we've collected these digital answers from our students, we can present the answers to the class. We can discuss them, and then our students can then perhaps focus on the next activity. How can droids in the text be useful during a space mission? Our students then, having discussed the answers and shared them with the class, they can then prepare their own short video presentation to answer the question. So we have different types of task here, and we're using technology to engage the students and give them a new outlet to actually produce language and work with a text and present information. So this could be one way, another way that we can use to engage our learners through blended learning techniques. Now, as I said before, inside the synchronous learning classroom, we're going to have many different opportunities for communication and for language production, as we have large groups of students interacting with each other. So in order to facilitate this, we might want to consider also using communication models or writing models inside our classroom. Again, if you have access to an interactive whiteboard software in your class, this may allow you to demonstrate different tasks. Here we can see a very simple communication task for primary students. They need to guess which kind of shape and they're drawing circles in the air. Here we've got visual and audio presentation of the task to help our students understand what is expected of them. We also have a project model here that we can demonstrate with our students. Now, even if you don't have an interactive whiteboard software, you can always project some examples onto the board. You can collect, again, examples, videos from the web. And one of the good things about using technology inside the classroom is if you use it enough, you're going to end up with some kind of a bank of video content that you can use again and again with your students. If you have performed a similar task before with your students and you have some pre-recorded videos, perhaps you can share these with your newer classes to give them some kind of communication model or example to work with. So this is how we can use technology, again, very simply, just to simply demonstrate communication tasks to our students. Here we can see an example of active learning that has been readjusted slightly to include some kind of technology and to allow students to produce language in ways that would be perhaps more interesting and engaging for them. We have a very traditional task. We have a simple role play. Imagine you attended a celebration. Use the phrases in the language box to act out a dialogue similar to the one in exercise 3. So here we have a very short recipe for adapting a role play so that we're incorporating some technology and having students communicate and collaborate and produce language in meaningful ways. So first of all, to complete the task, we're going to provide a model to the students. We can see the model in front of us, a very short dialogue that the students are going to study, and a mind map that helps the students to follow the flow of the conversation and elicit any useful language and structures. So we're going to use this model and the mind map to help to practice this language and structures, and we can ask for feedback from our class. Then we're going to ask our students to practice in pairs reading out the dialogue. So we can actually do this in front of a camera if you're teaching online, or in the classroom. If you are able to record parts of the lesson, you can have them act out this particular dialogue on camera. And as teachers, we're going to be monitoring the activity from the beginning all the way to the end, and we're providing immediate feedback to the students, any kind of mistakes or looking at pronunciation issues that we might want to cover. Then we're actually going to assign this task as an act out in front of the camera. Our students are going to prepare their own similar dialogue, which they're going to perform. And this can be done as a homework task. Students can go home and prepare a similar dialogue, which they're going to perform later on. And their task is to either demonstrate this dialogue in real time in the class, or to prepare a video recording of the dialogue, which they're going to share with the class in the next lesson. So by following this kind of recipe, we can see how a very simple role play task can be adapted slightly to include technology, to include chances for language production in meaningful ways. Our students end the lesson by creating their own dialogue and creating their own content in the form of a video, which they can then share with the teacher, with the class, and they will be able to use this for feedback. And as a teacher, you can perhaps use this for future lessons to demo role play activities. This is something else that we can consider. When it comes to active learning, we also want our students to be engaging with language in different and new ways. Perhaps you've done this before in your class. This is a favorite activity of mine. It involves making quizzes. So students collect information about a topic. This can be done as an ICT research topic or a collaborative topic. So students use the internet to research a topic, and then they prepare their own quiz and make their own questions, which they then share with the class. They can do this in many ways. One popular platform is to use Kahoot. It's a very popular quiz platform that students can use to create their own quizzes. They then log in with their mobile phones and they play the game, and it's a very nice kind of team game that you can play inside your class. But it's all about students using technology actively, and also combining it with what they've learned through their own self-study to produce something meaningful that they can share and complete with their colleagues inside the class. Now, this is one of my favorite activities. This involves, again, some ICT research, but this time it finishes with a vote and a debate. Basically, our students are going to be studying different characters that have been played by different actors in different films. So we're using Batman here as an example, and present them to the class. So our students can do this. They do some independent research at home. If they want to prepare a very short PowerPoint presentation, they can do that, or prepare a very short video and prepare to demonstrate it to the class. The class then votes for who played the character the best. Now, if you're teaching online in a Zoom classroom, we actually have the polls feature that allows you to vote for different things. So if you're doing this in an online Zoom classroom, this could be a good example of how you can use Zoom actively in your class to generate discussions, because from the results of this poll activity, you can actually have a debate. You see who's voted for the character that was played the best, and then you have your students discussing the answers, and this can turn into some kind of a debate as well. This is something else that we can use using technology, incorporating it with a task from our course book. Now that we've looked at digital strategies for the group space, let's have a look at digital strategies for learning in the individual space. So this could include platform-based learning, gamification, and digitalized assessment, for example. When we're looking at platform-based learning, perhaps many of you have been using platforms a lot more due to this shift to online teaching and distance learning. Platform-based learning can give us many different advantages and benefits for us, the teachers, and for our learners. First of all, it can allow us to assign homework very clearly and very easily to our learners. If you've been using things like Moodle or your own LMS system, I think you've probably found this out very quickly, that you can simply click a few buttons and then you've sent your homework back to your students. These can also include help sections. So as the teacher, you can include your own notes, or perhaps you can make your own audio files, attach any images that you found to help your students complete exercises. A lot of LMS systems also have this built in. They have their own glossaries, they have their own help sections, they even have their own audio files to help students to become more autonomous learners. So when they're working through activities in their own time, they are fully supported as they work on different things, and they're encouraged to actually study some things on their own and work some things out for themselves. What we can also find on platform-based learning platforms like this, we can also find instant feedback on various exercises. So our students are receiving instant feedback straight away on tasks that they performed, again helping them to become more self-autonomous with their learning, helping them to work through activities at their own pace and be able to see if they need to improve or not. Here we have some examples of digitalized assessment. So if you're thinking about assessing your students, why not do it through an LMS system, attaching tests to your Moodle page, or even sending tests via email and gathering up the results. This can be a great way to engage the learners, and through technical or digital resources, we can actually connect with the students and stay connected with them as they finish the test and send us back their results. Digitalized assessment also allows us to track progress for students. So we can see here we're able to access different students, track their progress, how have they done on the tests, how have they done in their homework, and monitor different skill areas. So a lot of LMS platforms today allow us to look at these things, and they provide us with a lot of feedback that perhaps we're not going to get in the individual space because learners are working on their own. And this is what I was talking about earlier with targeted feedback. We're able to find out a lot of information through learning platforms about our individual learners, how they work, and their skill sets. LMS platforms can also help us to check on visible attempts, so to monitor how difficult students have found different exercises and allow us to perhaps plan ahead with our lessons and help our students to consolidate anything and practice anything that they have struggled with when they've been working in the asynchronous environment. Now, one of the key features of learning platforms today, and something that perhaps you've come into contact with a lot, is this issue of gamified learning. Perhaps you've used it before in your classes. Gamified learning can be used to incentivize learning in different ways through different platforms, through earning skill points, through badges, for example, assigning different things to students. It allows us as teachers to perhaps reward students for things that we can't always measure through a platform. Things like speaking or spelling, for example. We're able to help our students to gain some reward and help them to develop their skills. Now, the final thing I want to talk to you about today is something called flipped learning. I've chosen to talk to you about flipped learning because I think it's perfect when we're talking about the digital classroom, as it combines both synchronous and asynchronous learning. It makes use of many different resources, and it can actually result in a better use of class time for you. If you're not aware of the term flipped learning, this is something that involves students studying content at home on their own first, and then coming to class and demonstrating what they have learned with different activities that they can perform in front of the teacher with the teacher present. For those of you who are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, flipped learning is essentially turning Bloom's taxonomy on its head. Our students are doing the understanding and remembering part at home by watching video content, and then when they come to class, they are using what they've learned to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create with the teacher present, ready to monitor and give feedback and guide students through these exercises. This is a great way to flip your lessons, flip your learning, and involve students with a range of different media outlets and technology, and help them to actually facilitate higher order thinking skills inside the classroom. So in our typical flipped lesson, we would have perhaps some reading activity. So students read and listen to a text, and they prepare some answers at home. If they're using an LMS platform, for example, while they do this activity at home to study the content, they're going to get instant feedback and scores on their progress. And when they arrive to the lesson, students are then going to do some of the higher order thinking skills. So they're going to be discussing their answers in groups. Teachers are going to be monitoring, providing feedback, checking answers. There may be some kind of extension activity or project connected to this task that our students will then engage with. And it's a collaborative and feedback-friendly environment. Our students are sharing what they've studied at home inside the class. Our teachers are there to guide them through the activities and to mediate any kinds of discussion between the students. So let's have a look at an example that we can use for a flipped lesson. So at home, our students are going to study a text about astronauts living on a space station, and they can either read a text or we actually have a video available as well.
The warnings are getting louder and louder. Extreme weather, global warming, pollution and overpopulation. Respected scientists like Stephen Hawking even believed we should start seeking alternative planets for possible habitation.
So students can either watch the video or read the text and then complete some simple exercises to check their understanding of the text and remember some of the facts from the text. And again, if they're using an LMS platform, they can get instant feedback on these exercises. Then, when they arrive to the class, the students are going to discuss their answers and feedback with the teacher. And then the teacher can then introduce some more challenging tasks that the students can engage with inside the class. Just perhaps asking simple questions like, what did you learn from the text? What did you find interesting about the text? And facilitating some kind of communication and interaction between students. And then thinking about, what do you think is the most difficult thing about living on another planet? This could then transform into some kind of a project or presentation, some kind of group work with students working together to present something back to the class, preparing a short video about what they've learned, giving their opinion about what they think would be difficult about moving to another planet or living on a space station, for example. So this is how we can combine both synchronous and asynchronous learning, with students studying content at home and then bringing some knowledge into the class and working through some higher order thinking skills activity inside the classroom. Here's an extension activity that we can also attach to this lesson. So we're thinking about moving to a space station. We're thinking about what it would be like living on a space station. So at home, our students make a list of things that they're going to take with them. They're going to give some reasons. Again, they can prepare a short list. If we have message board, or if we're using Google Forms, for example, we can use that in order to collect this information from the students. The students submit their answers. And then inside the class, our students are going to compare their answers and prepare a video presentation and share their answer with the class. And this could then lead into another class discussion or a vote for which group has prepared the best plan for going to live on a space station. This is how we could use flipped learning methods inside our classrooms to facilitate different areas, even with speaking and writing tasks that we would find in our traditional classroom. We're just incorporating a flipped approach using some technology there to help us along the way, using videos or an LMS platform, and then facilitating some discussion, and students are producing language, again, in meaningful ways. If they're presenting some kind of a presentation or a video, we're having some kind of a class discussion or a vote as well. So then, just some final thoughts. We've seen a lot of different strategies and techniques today. I think the key things to think about if we're looking to implement technology inside the classroom is to engage learners with a variety of resources, whether that be audio, visual presentation of materials, interactive whiteboard software, LMS systems, for example, using as many as we can to facilitate different areas of our lessons. Thinking of the best ways to present new information. As we saw, using an interactive whiteboard software could be key to doing this. Finding your own videos or creating your own content can also be a new and interesting way to motivate and engage with your students. We can also think for ways of students to become more autonomous learners. So using things like LMS systems, flipping your class, combining both synchronous and asynchronous learning can help our students to be more independent learners, research things for themselves, and then when they come to class, also help us, the teachers, to facilitate different kinds of productive tasks inside our class. This is how we can use technology, and I think this is going to benefit us in many different ways if we start small and focus perhaps on different areas of our lessons. So just some final thoughts then. Talking about technology, I think these quotes really kind of sum up what we've been talking about today. He who dares to teach must never cease to learn. I think that really encompasses our role as a teacher right now. We're teaching our learners, but we at the same time, we're having to learn and adapt our own teaching methods constantly in order to engage and motivate our students and deliver our lessons in the best possible way. Technology will not replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers can be transformational. I think this is a great quote, and it really does highlight that it doesn't really matter what kind of technology we're using, but if we're using it in the right way, we can really connect with our students, and our students are going to be very grateful for that. And they're going to, I think we're going to see the benefits of that inside our classroom. And as Bill Gates says as well, technology is just a tool. In terms of getting the kids to work together and motivating them, this is just a tool that we use. In the class, the teacher is the most important, because again, it's how we choose to adapt these materials and how we choose to use them that is really going to have the most positive effect with our learners. So thank you very much for your attention today. I hope I've been able to share with you some new or interesting ideas that perhaps you can take away to your classes, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you very much.